You live in the safest moment in human history. Your ancestors faced plagues that wiped out half of Europe. They sailed unknown oceans with no guarantee of return. They built civilizations with their bare hands, knowing they might not live to see them completed. You wake up in climate-controlled rooms, order food with the tap of a screen, and carry the sum of human knowledge in your pocket. And yet, have you ever felt smaller than them? Weaker? Less alive? There's a cruel irony buried in our progress. We've eliminated most of the external threats that once forged human character: hunger, exposure, uncertainty. Only to discover we've eliminated something else along the way. Something we didn't know we needed. We call it safety. We call it progress. We call it civilization. But what if we've been lying to ourselves? What if the very comfort we've spent centuries building has become the thing that's slowly killing us? Not our bodies, those are safer than ever, but something deeper, something that makes us distinctly human. You can feel it, can't you? The way challenge has been drained from daily life, the way risk has been regulated out of existence, the way we've traded the possibility of greatness for the guarantee of mediocrity. Your great-grandmother might have wondered if she'd survive the winter. You wonder if your phone battery will last until evening. She faced her mortality every day. You face your notifications. She was forced to become someone. You're allowed to remain no one. This isn't nostalgia for a brutal past. This is recognition of a psychological truth that we've forgotten in our rush toward comfort. Human beings don't flourish in the absence of struggle. We diminish. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming more than a century ago. He warned that our obsession with comfort, safety, and ease would produce what he called the last man, a creature so focused on avoiding pain that it forgot how to live. He was right, and the price we're paying is nothing less than the death of human greatness itself. Friedrich Nietzsche wasn't just a philosopher, he was a prophet of cultural decay. Writing in the 1880s, he watched the emerging bourgeois culture of his time, its obsession with comfort, respectability, and safety, and saw something that terrified him. Not war or poverty or disease, something worse: the slow death of human ambition itself. Nietzsche called it the coming of the last man. Picture this creature, every physical need met, every risk eliminated, every sharp edge of existence smoothed away. He lives in perfect safety, perfect comfort, perfect mediocrity. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? The last man asks. Thus speaks the last man, and he blinks. The blinking is everything. It's the gesture of someone who can no longer bear to look directly at life's intensity. Someone who has traded the possibility of greatness for the guarantee of comfort. But Nietzsche saw deeper than just comfort seeking. He understood that behind our desire for safety lies something more insidious, what he called herd morality. Think about it. When you were a child, what did the adults around you prize most? Good grades, good behavior, staying out of trouble, following the rules? They weren't trying to harm you. They were trying to protect you. But in their protection, they were teaching you something dangerous, that the highest virtue is not standing out. Herd morality is the morality of the group. It values conformity over excellence, safety over growth, consensus over truth. It asks not, what could you become, but how can you fit in? And it's everywhere. Your school system rewards compliance more than creativity. Your workplace punishes risk-taking more than it celebrates innovation. Your social media feeds show you exactly what everyone else is thinking, feeling, buying, believing. You're not encouraged to become someone. You're encouraged to remain everyone. Nietzsche saw this as the opposite of what he called the will to power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The drive to overcome, to create, to become more than you are. The will to power is what makes a person say, I will risk everything to become who I'm meant to be. The will to comfort says, I will sacrifice everything to remain safe. And here's what Nietzsche understood that we've forgotten. Comfort is not neutral. It's not just the absence of suffering. Comfort is an active force that shapes you, molds you, diminishes you. Every time you choose the easy path, you become a little more someone who chooses easy paths. Every time you avoid risk, you become a little more someone who avoids risk. Every time you seek comfort over growth, you become a little more someone who will always choose comfort over growth. This is what Nietzsche meant by decadence, not moral corruption, but spiritual exhaustion, the slow death of your capacity for self-overcoming. He watched the prosperous middle classes of his era and saw people who had everything they needed to live, but had forgotten why life was worth living. They had optimized for survival and lost the ability to thrive. They had become, in his words, human, all too human. But Nietzsche didn't just diagnose the problem. He offered an antidote, the Übermensch, the overman or superman. Not a superhuman, but a fully realized human. Someone who creates their own values instead of inheriting them from the herd. Someone who embraces struggle as the price of growth. Someone who would rather fail magnificently than succeed mediocrely. The Übermensch doesn't avoid suffering. He finds meaning in it. The Übermensch doesn't seek comfort. He seeks purpose. The Übermensch doesn't follow the crowd. He creates the path others will follow. This wasn't Nietzsche's fantasy. This was his warning. He was telling us, you can choose comfort and slowly die, or you can choose struggle and truly live, but you cannot choose both. We chose comfort, and now we're living with the consequences of that choice in ways Nietzsche could never have imagined, because the technology that was supposed to liberate us has instead given us new and more seductive forms of spiritual slavery. We have created the most comfortable cage in human history, and most of us don't even realize we're trapped inside it. But why does comfort have this power over us? Why do we keep choosing the easy path even when we know it leads nowhere? The answer lies in how your brain is wired. Your nervous system evolved over millions of years with one primary directive: keep you alive long enough to reproduce. Everything else, happiness, meaning, growth, greatness, is secondary. Your brain doesn't care if you thrive, it only cares if you survive. And survival, for most of human history, meant avoiding risk. The ancestor who heard a rustling bush and assumed it was a predator lived longer than the one who assumed it was just the wind. The tribe that stuck to known food sources survived famines better than the one that experimented with new plants. The individual who avoided conflict lived to see another day, while the risk-taker often didn't. This is why you feel more afraid of losing something than excited about gaining something of equal value. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it's hardwired into your DNA. Your brain treats every potential loss as a threat to your survival, even when the stakes are minimal. So, when modern life offers you comfort, a stable job, a predictable routine, a safe environment, your brain interprets this as winning the evolutionary lottery. You've found the ultimate resource, security without risk. But there's a catch your ancestors never had to face. In their world, comfort was temporary. The food ran out, winter came, enemies appeared. They were forced back into struggle whether they wanted it or not. In your world, comfort can last forever. And this creates what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. Your brain's tendency to return to a baseline level of satisfaction regardless of positive changes in your life. You get the promotion, buy the house, achieve the goal, and within months you're back to feeling normal. Not grateful, not fulfilled, just normal. Because your brain treats comfort like a drug, the first hit feels amazing, the second hit feels good, the third hit feels okay. Eventually, you need comfort just to feel normal, and anything less than comfort feels like suffering. This is comfort addiction, not a metaphor, but a literal rewiring of your reward system. But the real trap isn't just that comfort stops satisfying you. It's that comfort actively weakens your capacity for discomfort. Think about your heat tolerance. If you live in air conditioning all summer, stepping outside on a hot day feels unbearable. But if you gradually expose yourself to heat, your body adapts. You develop resilience. The same thing happens with psychological discomfort. Every challenge you face builds what researchers call stress inoculation, your ability to handle future stress. Every challenge you avoid weakens this capacity. Over time, even minor discomforts, waiting in line, having a difficult conversation, doing something you're not good at, start to feel overwhelming. You become psychologically fragile. This fragility manifests in ways that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. A delayed email triggers anxiety. A minor criticism feels devastating. An unexpected change in plans creates panic. Your comfort zone, which was supposed to protect you, has become a prison that makes the ordinary challenges of life feel impossible. And here's where Nietzsche's insight about herd morality becomes crucial, because your comfort addiction doesn't exist in isolation. It's reinforced by a culture that has made risk aversion not just acceptable, but virtuous. We call it safety first. We call it being responsible. We call it thinking of your family. But what we're really doing is creating what psychologists call system justification, the tendency to defend and rationalize the status quo, even when it's not serving us. You don't just choose comfort because it feels good. You choose comfort because everyone around you is telling you it's the smart choice, the moral choice, the mature choice. Your parents want you to have a secure job, not a meaningful one. Your friends celebrate your promotions, not your growth. Society rewards your compliance, not your courage. Your school system taught you to avoid failure rather than embrace learning. Your workplace punishes bold initiatives more than it rewards them. Your social circle subtly ostracizes anyone who dares to live differently. And slowly, imperceptibly, you internalize these messages until they become your own voice. You start telling yourself that taking risks is selfish, that pursuing your dreams is unrealistic, that settling for mediocrity is wisdom. This is what Nietzsche meant by the slave morality of the herd, a moral system designed not to help you flourish, but to keep you in line. But perhaps the cruelest mechanism of all is how comfort robs you of what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the psychological strengthening that comes from overcoming significant challenges. Studies show that people who face and overcome difficulties often emerge stronger, more confident, and more resilient than they were before. They develop what researchers call anti-fragility, the ability not just to survive stress, but to be strengthened by it. But this only happens if you actually face the challenge. If you avoid it, medicate it, or escape it through comfort, you miss the growth opportunity entirely. Consider the difference between someone who loses their job and wallows in victimhood versus someone who sees it as a chance to reinvent themselves. The same objective event, job loss, produces completely different outcomes based on how it's approached. The person who embraces the challenge often discovers capabilities they never knew they had. They build resilience, creativity, and confidence that serves them for life. The person who seeks immediate comfort through unemployment benefits, mindless entertainment, or emotional numbing remains essentially unchanged, weaker, if anything, because they've proven to themselves that they can't handle difficulty. And here's the paradox. The things that feel hardest in the moment often become the experiences you're most grateful for later. The relationship that challenged you, the job that pushed you, the failure that taught you who you really are. Meanwhile, the things that feel good in the moment, the Netflix binge, the shopping spree, the path of least resistance, often leave you feeling empty afterward. You know this. You've felt it. The question is, why do you keep choosing what feels good over what feels meaningful? Because your brain is running software designed for a world that no longer exists. Software that prioritizes immediate safety over long-term growth. Software that can't distinguish between the temporary discomfort of growth and the permanent threat of death. This software treats every challenging conversation as a physical threat, every creative risk as potential death, every step outside your comfort zone as a step toward extinction. And until you understand this, until you realize that your comfort seeking isn't a character flaw but a biological program running in the background, you'll keep wondering why you feel so small in such a big, comfortable world. The cage isn't locked from the outside. You're locking it from the inside, one comfortable choice at a time. This isn't just philosophy. This is history repeating itself. The clearest example of comfort destroying greatness comes from the civilization Nietzsche knew best, ancient Rome. At its peak, Rome was forged by struggle. Its early citizens were farmers and soldiers who built an empire through discipline, sacrifice, and relentless expansion. They lived with constant uncertainty, war, famine, political upheaval, and this uncertainty made them formidable. But success bred comfort, and comfort bred decay. By the later imperial period, Romans had everything their ancestors could have dreamed of: vast wealth, technological marvels, entertainment on demand, and unprecedented safety within the empire's borders. The average Roman citizen lived better than kings had just centuries before, and yet, this was when Rome began its slow collapse. The later Romans stopped producing the warriors, statesmen, and innovators who had built their civilization. Instead, they produced consumers, people whose greatest ambition was to be entertained, fed, and left alone. The historian Edward Gibbon captured this perfectly. The decline of Rome was the natural and inevitable effect of immoderate greatness. Prosperity ripened the principle of decay. Prosperity, comfort, safety, the very things that should have been Rome's reward became its poison. But you don't need to look back 2,000 years to see this pattern. Modern psychology has given us hard data on exactly how comfort shapes human behavior. In 1979, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky published their groundbreaking research on what they called prospect theory. They discovered that human beings are fundamentally risk-averse. We feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. This means that, when you're comfortable, the psychological cost of risking that comfort always feels greater than the potential benefit of growth. Your brain literally calculates that staying safe is twice as valuable as taking a chance on something better. Think about your own life. How many opportunities have you passed up, not because they weren't good opportunities, but because you couldn't bear the thought of losing what you already had? The job you didn't apply for because you might get rejected. The relationship you didn't pursue because you might get hurt. The creative project you didn't start because you might fail. Kahneman and Tversky weren't just describing individual psychology. They were describing the psychology of entire societies that have achieved comfort. But perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s. Milgram wanted to understand how ordinary people could participate in atrocities, so he designed an experiment where participants were told to deliver electric shocks to someone in another room whenever they answered questions incorrectly. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. They believed they were causing genuine pain, potentially even death. And yet, 65% of participants delivered what they believed were lethal shocks simply because an authority figure told them to. Why? Because the experimental setup offered them something irresistible, the comfort of not having to think for themselves. The authority figure took responsibility. The participants just had to follow orders. It was easier than making their own moral judgments, safer than standing up to authority, more comfortable than dealing with conflict. This is what happens when comfort becomes more valuable than conscience. And it's happening again, right now, in ways that would make Milgram's participants look like rebels. Consider the data on modern digital consumption. The average American now spends over 7 hours a day looking at screens. 7 hours of their waking life consumed by devices designed to deliver comfort, entertainment, and distraction on demand. Netflix calls it binge watching. But what it really is digital comfort addiction. The endless scroll of social media. The autoplay feature that removes even the minor discomfort of choosing what to watch next. The algorithm that feeds you exactly what you want to see, when you want to see it. This isn't entertainment. It's psychological morphine. Psychologist Jean Twenge has documented the results in her research on what she calls iGen, the generation raised on smartphones and social media. Compared to previous generations, they are less likely to take risks, less likely to work part-time jobs as teenagers, less likely to date, less likely to get driver's licenses, more likely to experience anxiety and depression, more likely to feel isolated despite being more connected than ever. They have been offered unprecedented comfort and safety, and in return, they have become unprecedented risk-averse and psychologically fragile. But the most damning evidence isn't statistical, it's experiential. How do you feel when your Wi-Fi goes out? When your phone battery dies? When you have to wait in line without entertainment? These minor inconveniences, things that wouldn't have registered as problems for 99.9% of human history, now feel genuinely distressing. You've become so accustomed to comfort that even its temporary absence feels like suffering. And this is exactly what Nietzsche predicted. Not that comfort would make us evil, but that it would make us weak. Not that safety would destroy us physically, but that it would destroy us spiritually. We have become a civilization of last men, blinking at the intensity of life. But here's what makes this evidence particularly troubling. We're not just passively experiencing this decline, we're actively choosing it. Researcher Barry Schwartz documented this in his study of what he calls the paradox of choice. Schwartz found that when people are given too many options, they often become paralyzed and default to whatever requires the least effort or risk. We have more choices than any generation in human history. More career options, more places to live, more ways to spend our time, more potential paths to greatness. And we're using this unprecedented freedom to choose safety, predictability, comfort. We're choosing to become smaller in a world that offers us the chance to become larger. The evidence is overwhelming. Comfort doesn't just fail to produce greatness, it actively prevents it. And the question we have to face is this: if Rome, with all its power and glory, couldn't survive the transition from struggle to ease, what makes us think we can? What makes us think we're different? Look around you. The evidence isn't just in history books or psychology journals, it's in your daily life. You live in the most comfortable era in human history, and you're surrounded by the most risk-averse generation that has ever existed. Your workplace has been optimized for comfort. Human resources departments exist primarily to eliminate friction, conflict, and discomfort. Performance reviews are designed to avoid difficult conversations. Most companies would rather maintain mediocre employees than risk the discomfort of honest feedback or necessary terminations. Your colleagues spend their days in meetings that accomplish nothing, following processes that serve no purpose except to distribute responsibility so thinly that no one can be held accountable for failure. They've created elaborate systems designed not to produce excellence, but to avoid blame. And you participate in this charade because it's comfortable, because it's safe, because it pays the bills and doesn't require you to risk anything meaningful. But the cost is your soul. Your education system has become a comfort delivery mechanism. Schools now prioritize students' emotional well-being over their intellectual development. Trigger warnings protect students from ideas that might disturb them. Grade inflation ensures that failure, the most powerful teacher, has been largely eliminated from the learning process. Universities offer safe spaces where students can retreat from challenging viewpoints. They provide emotional support animals, stress relief therapy dogs, and cry closets for when the world becomes too overwhelming. These institutions are producing graduates who have never learned to struggle, never learned to fail, never learned to overcome. They've been given diplomas, but they haven't been given strength. And when these graduates enter the real world, they bring their comfort addiction with them. Your consumer culture has weaponized this weakness. Every product, every service, every app is designed to eliminate friction from your life. You don't want to cook? There's an app for that. You don't want to clean? There's a service for that. You don't want to think about what to watch? The algorithm will decide for you. You don't want to face uncertainty? Your phone provides constant validation through likes, comments, and notifications. You don't want to be alone with your thoughts? Spotify will fill every moment of silence with carefully curated audio designed to match your mood. The entire economy has reorganized itself around one principle: eliminating your discomfort. And you've paid for this convenience with your capacity for growth. But perhaps nowhere is this clearer than in how you handle conflict and disagreement. Your social media feeds show you exactly what you want to hear. The algorithm learns your biases and feeds them back to you, creating what researchers call echo chambers, digital comfort zones where your beliefs are never challenged. When you do encounter disagreement, your first instinct isn't to engage. It's to block, mute, or unfriend. You've been given tools to eliminate intellectual discomfort with the click of a button. Your political discourse has become a series of safe spaces where people retreat to be with others who think exactly like them. Democrats consume Democratic media. Republicans consume Republican media. Neither side seriously engages with the strongest arguments from the other side. This isn't just polarization. This is intellectual comfort addiction, the inability to tolerate the discomfort of having your beliefs challenged, and it's making you weaker. But the most insidious part is how this comfort addiction shapes your personal relationships. How many difficult conversations have you avoided because they might be uncomfortable? How many times have you chosen to scroll through your phone rather than deal with a problem in your marriage, your friendship, your family? How often do you choose the comfort of distraction over the discomfort of intimacy? Because real intimacy requires risk. It requires vulnerability. It requires the possibility of rejection, misunderstanding, conflict. Comfort promises you can avoid all of that. Comfort promises you can maintain relationships without risk. But what comfort delivers instead is superficial connections that never deepen, never challenge you, never help you grow. Now, pause for a moment. Look at your own life honestly. Where do you choose comfort over growth? Is it in your career, where you stay in a job that's too small for you because it's safe? Is it in your relationships, where you avoid difficult conversations because they might create conflict? Is it in your personal development, where you consume self-help content instead of actually doing the hard work of change? What risks are you avoiding because they feel too uncomfortable? What dreams have you abandoned because pursuing them would require you to face uncertainty, criticism, or the possibility of failure? When was the last time you deliberately chose the harder path because you knew it would make you stronger? And here's the question that cuts deepest. What would the person you could become think of the person you are now? Because that person, the one you could become, is on the other side of the discomfort you're avoiding. They're on the other side of the difficult conversation you're not having, the creative project you're not starting, the risk you're not taking, the standard you're not holding yourself to. That person exists, but only if you're willing to trade comfort for growth. The tragedy is that we live in an era with more opportunities for greatness than any generation before us. More access to information, more tools for creation, more freedom to choose our own path. And we're using this unprecedented opportunity to become smaller, not larger. We're using our freedom to choose slavery, our prosperity to choose poverty of spirit, our safety to choose spiritual death. You know this is true because you can feel it. In the quiet moments between distractions, you can sense the person you could be, the life you could live, the impact you could have. But that person requires you to give up the thing you've been taught to value most, the comfortable life. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice for greatness? And perhaps more importantly, what are you sacrificing by choosing comfort instead? But wait, before we condemn comfort entirely, we need to face the strongest arguments against Nietzsche's position. Because there's truth in the opposition, and intellectual honesty demands we wrestle with it. The critics would argue, correctly, that comfort has enabled some of humanity's greatest achievements. The Renaissance didn't emerge from medieval struggle. It emerged from the prosperity of Italian city-states. When people didn't have to worry about basic survival, they had the mental space to create art, philosophy, and scientific breakthroughs that still inspire us today. Shakespeare didn't write his masterpieces while fighting for his life. He wrote them in Elizabethan England, a period of relative stability and prosperity. The Globe Theatre was a product of comfort, not struggle. The scientific revolution happened not in the Dark Ages, but during periods when scholars had the luxury of contemplation. Isaac Newton developed his theories of physics while Cambridge University was closed due to plague. But he could only do this because he had the financial security to think rather than merely survive. Modern medicine, human rights, and technological innovation have all flourished in societies that prioritize safety and comfort over constant struggle. Would we really want to return to a world where half of all children died before age 5? Where a broken leg might mean death? Where uncertainty about your next meal was a daily reality? The critics have an even stronger point. Struggle without restraint doesn't produce greatness. It produces destruction. Look at societies that have embraced Nietzschean ideals of power and self-overcoming without the moderating influence of compassion and safety. Nazi Germany explicitly drew inspiration from Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch. They rejected comfort, embraced struggle, glorified risk and conquest. The result wasn't human greatness, it was human horror. Or consider the various revolutionary movements that promised to forge stronger humans through deliberate hardship. Stalin's Soviet Union, Mao's Cultural Revolution, Pol Pot's Cambodia. Each claimed to be creating new, stronger human beings by destroying the comfortable, bourgeois old order. each produced mass death instead of mass flourishing. This suggests that comfort isn't just morally preferable, it's practically necessary. Stable, safe societies create the conditions where human potential can actually be realized rather than simply surviving. And there's another argument the critics make. Perhaps what Nietzsche saw as spiritual decline was actually moral progress. The great men of the past that he admired were often great at the expense of others. Alexander the Great conquered much of the known world by enslaving and slaughtering millions. Julius Caesar achieved immortal fame by destroying the Roman Republic and launching decades of civil war. The medieval knights that romantic philosophers idealized lived by codes of honor that routinely involved violence against peasants, women, and anyone they deemed inferior. Maybe what Nietzsche called the death of greatness is actually the birth of something better, a world where human dignity isn't reserved for a small elite who achieve it through dominance over others. Maybe comfort-seeking isn't spiritual weakness, it's moral evolution, the recognition that a good life should be available to everyone, not just to those willing to climb over others to achieve it. Modern Scandinavian countries, with their emphasis on social safety nets and quality of life, consistently rank among the happiest and most innovative societies on Earth. Their comfort culture has produced high levels of education, creativity, and human flourishing. This isn't the spiritual decadence Nietzsche predicted. It's evidence that comfort can serve greatness rather than destroying it. But here's where the argument gets more subtle. The real question isn't whether comfort can enable greatness. Clearly it can. The question is whether comfort as an end in itself, comfort as the highest value, inevitably undermines greatness. And the answer seems to be yes. Comfort is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. When comfort serves a higher purpose, when it creates the stability necessary for art, science, and moral progress, it enhances human potential. When comfort becomes the purpose itself, when avoiding discomfort becomes the organizing principle of a life or a society, it breeds the spiritual stagnation Nietzsche warned about. The Renaissance flourished not because the Italians were comfortable, but because they used their comfort in service of something greater than comfort. They took risks, they challenged authority, they pushed boundaries. Modern Scandinavian success comes not from comfort alone, but from a culture that still values challenge, education, and achievement. Their safety net exists to enable risk-taking, not to eliminate it. The difference is crucial: comfort that enables growth versus comfort that replaces it. And this brings us to the heart of the matter. The problem isn't that we have air conditioning and smartphones. The problem is that we've made avoiding discomfort our highest aspiration. We've confused means with ends. Comfort should be the foundation that allows you to pursue something meaningful. Instead, we've made comfort itself the meaning. The question isn't whether you should live in a cave and hunt your own food. The question is whether you're using your unprecedented safety and prosperity to become more than you are, or whether you're using it to avoid becoming anything at all. Are you leveraging your comfort to take greater risks, or using it to take fewer risks? Are you building on the foundation of safety, or hiding in it? The critics are right. Comfort can serve greatness, but Nietzsche was also right. When comfort becomes the master instead of the servant, greatness dies. The choice, as always, is yours. So, how do you escape the comfort trap without destroying the genuine benefits of civilization? How do you reclaim your capacity for greatness while living in a world designed to eliminate discomfort? The answer isn't to abandon comfort entirely. It's to change your relationship with it. The most powerful tool you have is the deliberate choice of discomfort when comfort is available. This isn't masochism, this is training. Every time you choose the harder path when an easier one is available, you're building what psychologists call distress tolerance, your capacity to function effectively despite discomfort. Start small, take cold showers. Not because hot water is evil, but because choosing cold water when hot water is available teaches your nervous system that discomfort won't kill you. The ancient Stoics understood this. They practiced voluntary poverty, sleeping on the floor, eating simple food, wearing rough clothes, not because they thought wealth was wrong, but because they wanted to prove to themselves that they could lose everything and still be okay. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would periodically live like a slave for a few days. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" This is the practice of voluntary discomfort, choosing difficulty when ease is available, proving to yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances, fast when you could eat, walk when you could drive, read when you could watch, create when you could consume. But the practice goes deeper than physical discomfort. Choose difficult conversations when you could avoid them. Choose challenging projects when you could coast. Choose to learn things that stretch your mind when you could stick with what you already know. Most importantly, reframe your relationship with struggle itself. Stop seeing discomfort as something to be eliminated and start seeing it as information. When you feel resistance to doing something, making that phone call, starting that project, having that conversation, that resistance is your compass pointing toward growth. The things you resist most are often the things you need most. But here's what makes this practice transformative. You're not just building tolerance for discomfort, you're building identity. Every time you choose the harder path, you become someone who chooses harder paths. Every time you face difficulty voluntarily, you become someone who doesn't run from difficulty. You're literally reshaping your sense of self from someone who seeks comfort to someone who seeks growth. But individual change isn't enough. The systems around us actively discourage the very behaviors that build character. We need structural changes that make growth easier and stagnation harder. Start with education. Instead of optimizing schools to eliminate stress and failure, we need to optimize them to build resilience. This means bringing back consequences, grades that reflect actual performance, not effort or improvement, academic challenges that some students will fail, feedback that's honest rather than encouraging. It means replacing safe spaces with brave spaces, environments where difficult ideas can be explored and challenged without emotional protection. Most importantly, it means teaching students that their feelings are not the measure of truth. That being uncomfortable doesn't mean something is wrong. That growth requires moving beyond what feels good. Imagine an education system that required every student to take on a project where failure was a real possibility, engage seriously with ideas they disagreed with, develop a skill that required sustained effort over months or years, take responsibility for solving real problems in their community. This isn't about making school harder for the sake of hardness. It's about preparing students for a world where comfort won't always be available, and growth requires embracing difficulty. In the workplace, we need to replace the comfort-optimized structures that reward mediocrity with systems that reward excellence, even when it's uncomfortable. This means honest performance reviews that actually address problems, promotion systems based on results rather than politics, work environments where difficult conversations are expected, not avoided. It means creating what researcher Amy Edmondson calls psychological safety, not the safety to avoid challenge, but the safety to take risks, make mistakes, and speak truth without fear of retaliation. Companies that have implemented this approach, like Netflix with its culture of keeper teams rather than families, or Amazon with its leadership principle of disagree and commit, consistently outperform their comfort-optimized competitors. But the most important structural change is cultural. We need new stories about what constitutes a life well lived. Right now, our cultural narratives celebrate comfort, safety, and ease. The successful person is someone who has eliminated uncertainty from their life. The good parent is someone who protects their children from all difficulty. The admirable leader is someone who makes things easier for everyone. We need narratives that celebrate different values, stories that honor the entrepreneur who risks everything to build something meaningful, the artist who chooses creative uncertainty over financial security, the parent who prepares their children for difficulty rather than protecting them from it, stories that recognize discomfort as a sign of growth rather than a problem to be solved. This cultural shift is already happening in some communities. The rise of obstacle course races, cold water swimming, and marathon running suggests people are hungry for voluntary difficulty. The growing interest in stoicism, meditation retreats, and other practices that embrace rather than avoid discomfort shows that many people recognize something is missing from their comfort-optimized lives. But we need to expand this from individual lifestyle choices to broader cultural values. We need to stop seeing comfort as an achievement and start seeing it as a starting point. The key insight from the counter-arguments is that discomfort without direction is just suffering. The goal isn't to be uncomfortable for its own sake. It's to use discomfort in service of something meaningful. This is where individual and structural solutions converge. Personally, this means connecting your voluntary discomfort to your deepest values. Don't just take cold showers. Use the practice to build the resilience you need for your creative work. Don't just have difficult conversations. Have them because meaningful relationships require honesty. Structurally, this means creating institutions that use discomfort to serve human flourishing. Schools that challenge students in service of their growth. Workplaces that demand excellence in service of meaningful achievement. Communities that encourage risk-taking in service of innovation and progress. The Romans had a phrase, per aspera ad astra, through hardships to the stars. They understood that greatness isn't the absence of difficulty. Greatness is what emerges when you use difficulty as the raw material for building something extraordinary. You live in a world that offers you unprecedented comfort. The question is, what are you going to build with it? Will you use your safety as a launching pad for greater risks? Will you use your prosperity as a foundation for more ambitious goals? Will you use your freedom as an opportunity to choose difficult but meaningful paths? Or will you use your comfort to avoid growth, your safety to avoid risk, your freedom to choose the path of least resistance? The choice isn't between comfort and suffering. It's between comfort that serves growth and comfort that replaces it. Choose wisely, because on the other side of that choice lies either the person you could become or the slow death of the possibility that such a person could ever exist. We've reached the end of this exploration, but you've reached the beginning of a choice that will define not just what you do, but who you become. You now understand the trap. You see how comfort, pursued as an end in itself, slowly strangles the possibility of greatness. You recognize the mechanisms, hedonic adaptation, loss aversion, system justification, that keep you locked in patterns that feel safe but leave you feeling empty. You've seen the evidence from Rome's decline to your own daily experience of choosing distraction over difficulty, ease over growth, the known over the unknown. You've heard the counter-arguments and understand that comfort isn't evil. It's just a terrible master and a wonderful servant. And you've been given the tools: voluntary discomfort, purposeful struggle, the reframing of resistance as a compass, pointing toward what you need most. But tools don't build anything by themselves. Knowledge doesn't transform anyone by itself. The question that remains is the only question that matters. What will you choose? Will you choose the shallow safety of a comfortable life, or the deeper aliveness that comes from continually becoming more than you are? Because make no mistake, this is a choice you'll face not once, but every single day. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off, you'll choose between the comfort of hitting snooze and the discipline of getting up immediately. Next week, when you're offered a project that stretches your abilities, you'll choose between the safety of declining and the growth that comes from accepting. Next month, when you need to have a difficult conversation with someone you care about, you'll choose between the comfort of avoidance and the integrity of honesty. Next year, when you're deciding whether to take a risk on your dreams or stay in the security of your current situation, you'll choose between the guarantee of remaining who you are and the possibility of becoming who you could be. Each choice seems small in isolation, but choices compound. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you become more someone who chooses comfort over growth. Every time you choose safety over meaning, you become more someone who chooses safety over meaning. And eventually, these small choices add up to a life, either a life of gradual diminishment or a life of continual expansion. Nietzsche was right about one thing. We are the first generation in human history with the luxury of this choice. Your ancestors didn't get to choose comfort over struggle. Struggle chose them. You get to choose struggle. You get to choose difficulty. You get to choose discomfort in service of something greater than comfort. This is not a burden. This is a privilege. The privilege of voluntary greatness. The question is, will you use it? Will you join the ranks of those who trade the shallow safety of the known for the deeper satisfaction of becoming? Will you become someone who seeks challenge rather than avoiding it, who creates meaning rather than consuming it, who builds something worth building rather than merely surviving? Or will you become another casualty of comfort, someone who had every opportunity for greatness and chose mediocrity instead? The choice is yours. But it's not a choice you can postpone indefinitely, because every moment you spend choosing comfort over growth is a moment you can't get back. Every opportunity you decline out of fear is an opportunity that may never come again. The person you could become is waiting on the other side of your comfort zone. They're waiting for you to choose them over the person you are now. They're waiting for you to decide that becoming extraordinary is worth the discomfort of leaving ordinary behind. How long will you keep them waiting? Where in your own life do you see comfort holding you back from greatness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this exploration challenged you to think differently about the role of struggle in human flourishing, consider subscribing for more inquiries into what it means to live a life worth living.